Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and I want to take this chance to welcome you to this channel. I am Professor Silas Odongo, and this channel is Professor Silas Odongo Knowledge Hub. Ladies and gentlemen, allow me today to talk to you about transdisciplinary research methods in climate change. Ladies and gentlemen, previously, we began the journey of discussing climate change research. And I remember having taken you through the various approaches, the biophysical methods, socioeconomic methods. And I ended that by striking some connection between the two, particularly with regard to climate change research. And I promised to bring you up to speed with transdisciplinarity, or TDA as it is called. Allow me to begin this and break this into the following subtopics for ease of discussion. The first issue I will deal with is the matter of transdisciplinarity. What is it? How do we use it? Then the second issue we will deal with is how to differentiate between monodisciplinarity, multidisciplinarity, interdisciplinarity, and transdisciplinarity. The third issue I want to bring to speed with you is on modes of knowledge production. We look at science and then society. How do they converge? The fourth issue I will look at is the overview of the TDA methodology. So what is the process? Looking at measuring the world, understanding the world, and transforming the world. The fifth issue I will bring you to speed with is around convergence. So how do we converge the change process and research process in this methodology? Then the sixth issue we'll deal with is why do we go for transdisciplinarity? So why is that approach useful? And then the seventh one will be some of the central tenets, some of the central concepts in transdisciplinarity. And then I will also take you with speed to the key principles of the TDA that we are looking at. And then we look at the interactive learning and action and the dynamic learning agenda. And then I will lastly conclude with the TDA in a nutshell. So what is it in a nutshell? Let's go. Ladies and gentlemen, the idea of transdisciplinarity is a relatively new concept and application in research. And many scholars agree that it is one of the most modern approaches to studying phenomena that spans biophysical and socioeconomic. And the idea is packaged within that transdisciplinarity, the one I have talked about. It is a new form of learning and problem solving. And you involve cooperation with different actors, different elements of society, and then you bring in the academics, you bring in the academia. And so we are very much used to these terminologies like monodisciplinarity. So what do we call monodisciplinarity? For example, look at the scientific approach which is used when you come from a purist discipline. Let's say you are a sociologist. Let's say you are a geologist or a meteorologist. How do you look at the world? So if you understand, you seek to understand and measure and understand the world based on the tenets given to you or the theories given to you by your discipline, then we say you are deploying monodisciplinarity. What about multidisciplinarity? Supposing there is a research endeavor or inquiry that takes into account convergence of knowledge at that level. So you use perspective from one method, let's say meteorology, and then you also use perspective from environment, and then probably you also use perspective from sociology, and you tend to treat those disciplines as individual and discrete in any one given study. Say, for example, you are studying the first objective is on this meteorology, the second one is on environment, and the third one is on sociology. So you tend to look at the methodology and they are as individual and independent, and then you tend to use them within one given study. Could you give a clear picture of what we are calling multidisciplinarity? What about interdisciplinarity? This is built on the thinking that all these disciplines are related. Their concepts, their methodology, even their theories run into one another. You probably find a concept or a theory within sociology, and the same one you also find it in environment, and say also in meteorology. So there is a way in which those concepts those theories and those methods run into each other in a kind of collaborative approach, then we call that interdisciplinarity. So what do we call transdisciplinarity, the fourth thinking? So look at what we have described in interdisciplinarity, and you assume that knowledge is actually controlled, is initiated and controlled by the academics, and the academic uses the interdisciplinarity I'm talking about, and then you also include the non-academic environment. Look at the community. So a case whereby you have a research team, and this research team is from the multidisciplinary approach we are talking about, and then you bring them to the community. So then we have a case where science now speaks to society, and society also speaks back to science. So look at that collaboration. It's a new form of thinking, even though we are used to approaches that are elitist in nature. We have been able to see a lot of studies centered around academics, students or scholars conceptualize research process in their offices or desktop. And then the way they have done it, they take it to research community. That is a bit different from what I am trying to say. So that is, I would be saying that is either monodisciplinary, or it is multidisciplinary, or at best it is interdisciplinary. But now where you take that interdisciplinarity to the community, to society where problems are there to be sorted out, and you also bring in those people so that there is a dialogue between the community and the scientist in a more or less equal platform where all of them are actually at the same pedestal, then we begin to look at transdisciplinarity. How does that work? For example, it involves what we are calling knowledge production and knowledge integration, for example. I have talked about the concept of science speaking to society. How does science speak to society? Look at it this way. We've been able to see some top-down kind of studies, and they are very common. Actually, what we are proposing in TDA is actually a bit of a departure from what many scientists are doing. So you conceptualize an issue, and you are part of academic community, which is disciplinary, which is multidisciplinary, or even interdisciplinary, in your institute, or in your school, or in your department, or in your faculty. And then you look at yourself as authority in knowledge. You want to generate knowledge. So all of you who belong to that group look at themselves as people who are homogeneous. You're scholars. You're part of academic community. And then you look at the other side of the coin, where we have mode 2, where now society also speaks back to science. Is it possible that you can have that kind of interdisciplinary team from your institute going to the community so that you build a collaborative venture of research? So you look at the context which carries both you and the community members. We describe such a transdisciplinary ecology as a situation where both science and society combine together at equal wavelength. And so we have a sort of heterogeneous grouping of scholars and practitioners. And so whatever happens is consultative, is consulted, it is reflexive. We talk about social accountability. Is it possible that you can see that very helpful? Where, because we normally conceptualize this around the fact that many things that academic people do will to a large extent remain theory and remain only important at such stigmatized places. What if we conceptualize issues with people who are at the core of the problems, where problems occur, and so we bring them on the table together and we start the process from the beginning, where we learn from experiences and it enables us to change things as things go, so that all of us become satisfied in that kind of a reflexive research endeavor. That is what we are describing as a transdisciplinary approach. And so there are 3 reasons why we would be able to do it, because typically, if you find such kind of grouping, what could be their objective of research? We together seek to measure the world. How do we measure the world? We've been able to talk about the biophysical methods, talked about socioeconomic methods. We would use them to measure the world as scientists. So we can use surveys, we use socioeconomic surveys, we use biophysical surveys that we had mentioned. We use experimental designs in biophysical, the ones I described. We also use the quasi-experimental methods in socioeconomic. We also use modeling and simulations that we talked about to be able to give us a picture. So we say that we are measuring the world. Then after measuring the world, our second endeavor is to be able to understand the world. So how do we understand the world? We could be doing interviews. We could be engaging in historical learnings, storytelling. We could be engaging in participatory processes of coming together and reasoning together, finding a common ground on which we envisage a research process so that all of us do things that will be meaningful for us, not those that will be only meaningful for academic community. And then the third one, we transform the world. How do we transform the world? So now we talk about the convergence between the scientific community and the social community, society as it were. So we engage in appreciative inquiry. We engage in dialogue. We engage in participation. We engage in methodology that put us, all of us together as people of equal statures, that we begin an endeavor that all of us will be very interested in. Why would we do this? Yet they look like two parallel processes. So does it mean that the TDA is two parallel? If you look at it, it appears that we have the change process and research process. Ladies and gentlemen, we need to move away from a situation where people start research for the research's sake. What if we would be commissioning research that boils down to, that leads to change process? So we look at research process and change process as processes that go together towards achieving the goal, even though they would be looking different. Why would we be doing this, and how is this supposed to be done? In the change process, what do we envisage in change? All of us intend to change from the current situation to future situation. So it should be our endeavor that when you are a good researcher, you commission research that will change the community, that will move society from where it is now to the next level, because we envisaging an element of growth. And then we imagine the consultation, mutual understanding, and knowledge integration. We know that the scientists will come with their knowledge. Society will also have people or groups that will come with their own knowledge, as it were, like the eye care, for example. Then all those stakeholders sit together and then they get a way around it. And then look at the research team also. They also have the research process. They investigate the current state of affairs by articulating it so that they come up with what can be very important for future. They support learning, as it were. They also support knowledge integration and look at the stakeholders that they have, particularly the academic community. So then the process of what happens could be envisaged like, if we all agree, society and academics or academia, they agree together on a certain thematic area. Then they develop together the guiding idea. Both of them develop the guiding idea. And then the guiding idea herald into a plan. And this plan can then be actioned. So we use the plan to take it to the next level of action. Then after we have acted, we then observe. We observe everything. And then we come back and reflect. After reflecting, we are able to go again to replan or to revise our plan and take the plan that we have revised to the next stages again, like we act using it, and then we observe, and then we reflect. So sort of interactive process, interaction, so that the learning, the research process and the change process go together in a cyclic fashion, so that whatever we are going to do is done by us, is conceptualized by us, and is a result of our thinking, our reflections, our change of the various plans that we have, so that we address the issues of importance to us. We can end up changing plans several times in this kind of endeavor. It doesn't become static, like a desktop study where somebody sits in his office, the way I now sit in the office, and I come up with a proposal or a concept, and then I go outside there and implement it the way it is. In this case of TDA, transdisciplinarity, I don't do that. We just have a team from the academics. And then we go to the community where the problem is. Then we understand the problem together. Then we agree on the possible design to address that. And then we participate together to deal with it. As we deal with it, we also learn so that we are able to think and then do it even much better so that we all live that kind of engagement as researchers and practitioners well satisfied. Look at that kind of engagement. That's what we are calling the TDA. Why do we go for TDA? Why do we go for transdisciplinarity? We know that generally it's not possible for us to properly conceptualize or formulate problems. Sometimes even as researchers, you might think that you know where the problem is, but you might be cheated that you actually know it. Problem may not be known by only one person. So how do we get a problem that is real problem? We use that kind of approach. We also have different stakeholders. We know that for you to do things that make sense, you need different stakeholders. And different stakeholders come with different frames of references. The pedestals, where they stand as they look at the world, could be very different. So we have different perspectives. And then we also have problems with resources. And resources are what we normally use to give solutions to issues over time. We have also been able to see problems that are very hard to resolve or to solve. So how do we go about it? We normally say there is nothing hard if all of us were to sit together and agree and use our experiences to address it. That is what we are calling transdisciplinarity. So there are those elements of spiral of evolution. We are acting in a very cyclic and iterative process that we think can be very important. Why do we go for that transdisciplinarity? We also know that society is a complex of so many things. Look, for example, at climate change I'm talking about. We know what causes climate change. So the cause of climate change and even the effect are actually separated by time and even place. Climate change we are experiencing in Africa could have been caused by issues elsewhere. So look at that kind of dynamic complexity that we are engaging with in our world today. We also have to encounter issues that are very new to us. They are very unfamiliar to both scientists and even community. But you know what? If we come together, we are able to fathom them. We are able to come up with solutions. Look at COVID, for example. When COVID came, it was a totally new thing. People didn't know it. Even the medics had not heard about it. But you know what could have led to it quick resolution would have been if we were to use a TDA approach where we use all the things that we have. Society comes with what they have. Scientists also come up with what they have because the issue affects both society and scientists. For example, we also have a society where we are having a lot of social complexity, social contradictions. Different actors means different value frames and different interests. We look at the multi-stakeholder issues within societies that can easily be resolved if we were to think about issues through this. So then we have a unified research agenda when we are doing a TDA research. What do we call that unified agenda? We have a shared dream. Every research must have a shared dream. By the way, TDA researches are those that you cannot start if you will not use it to change, or if there will not be some level of transformation. So how do we do that? Common dream must first exist. And then we design a structured approach to doing things, to integrating the various views we are having. Remember, we are having the views from the academia. Then we are also having views from communities where the problems are. So we have a shared understanding. And then we use this to formulate inclusive research agenda, which then can lead to some tangibility in terms of sustainable outputs and outcomes. Those are the things we are talking about. And then we look at some of the common concepts. What are some of the common issues, common concepts that we have within transdisciplinarity? Participation, knowledge integration, reflections that we have talked about, emerging design and process, and then interactive learning and action. Those are the kind of things. I want to just mention them very quickly so that we can understand them. So where do we bring participation, for example? Look at relevant stakeholders to a problem. Every problem has got its relevant stakeholders. You involve them actively in all phases of research process. Then we look at the other one of knowledge integration. For example, knowledge integration. We have knowledge from different places, from academics and from society. Look at those that we have just been able to mention. So they come in form of explicit and implicit knowledge. Explicit is that which is scientific, and implicit is that which is coded, which comes from society, which maybe has not been verified, even though that I don't like that term, because society also has verified their own things. So we have that mutuality, mutual learning process, where now different actors agree on a common thing, on a given issue. So that kind of knowledge integration is an important factor that we think about. Then we have reflection at two levels. We have personal reflection, and then we have collective reflections. How do researchers and stakeholders on frame of references influence the research process, for example? Your own reflection. And then collective reflection is what we had called reflexivity. I think we have been able to mention it. Why do we need to reflect, particularly when we are engaging with a process like this? Because of personal perspectives on problems. And then we have to engage behavior and routine actions. So those are the things we're talking about. Why we need that kind of reflection. I also talked about the emergent design and process. TDA is being driven by an emergent design, a design that was not prescribed, for example. It is a design that you come together as scientists and community and you design it. Let's say on a thematic area like climate change response, and then you agree that you want to tackle in that community. You want to address problems of flood. How do you go about it? If you all agree that flood is a problem that is caused by climate change and it affects community, so what happens? Researchers and community will meet in that place, and then they agree that they are going to do flood, and then they do reconnaissance. Then after that, they come up with a plan, and then they take that plan into action, and then they observe what is possible, what comes out of it, and then they reflect, and then they revise the plan the way I had said before. So it keeps on being cyclic. So it becomes an interactive and responsive process, which can go in several processes that we talked about. So in terms of interactive learning actions that I think I mentioned, so the key principles of ILA is end users have a prominent role. Look at that. You ensure that the people who are going to benefit most have got prominent role in this research process because it will change them. It's also an innovative process that is centered around a common theme or a common vision. That's what we're talking about. And then you look at development of relationships and trust. Trust is important between the academia and the society and community. We have also to rely on coalition building. We need to build togetherness as a people. We need to integrate the different knowledge that will be important, that will have resulted from the union between the scientists and society. And then we have to be able to build interdisciplinary team that will guide the whole of that process. So if we look at the whole of the process of TDA, so we look at preparation. How do we prepare for it? We begin with interdisciplinary team. We bring the scientists together with the community or society together. Then they start the process of even reviewing some literature, getting what they have to know and what they know, and then they select the site where they want to do the thing. And then after that, they go to the second phase, which is in-depth study. So we could have interviews with researchers, we could have interviews with extension workers, we have interviews with the marketing board, the NGOs, policy makers. Then we also have interviews with the farmers, the people who are living in that place who are doing all sorts of farming. We can even do focus group with them. Then having done with all those two groups, the scientists and the community, then we integrate the knowledge through a meeting whereby we dialogue together, all the participants together, and then we reach a situation whereby now we come up with an agreeable design, and then we set research agenda, which will then drive the whole process, including even the policy agenda that we are talking about. Why is this union important? Because of the dynamic nature of learning processes that we have in our community. So if we have this kind of meeting, all questions that are important for the running of the project are addressed. They are understood and addressed by all the parties. It is a meeting where all difficult issues are made explicit so that people know everything and even what they are doing. You begin the process of getting along, knowing one another and trusting one another. So it's like the whole process of TDA has got to do with action, then experience, then intervention. So when you begin research, it gives you information that enables you to act. Then while you act together, you learn through experiences that you will have realized. And then the experience that you will realize will help you to reboot or to reorganize yourself, to redesign. Then you come up with interventions that are important. So that is the whole process that we are talking about. So this method that we are talking about, the TDA method, is normally an analytical tool. It gives you a variety of lenses through which you look at problems. It is also an interactive tool. It enables all participants to be able to converge together so that their views count in issues that affect them. It is not good these days for you to conceptualize research without the people who are affected by the problem. So if you bring all of them together, then you're fostering that integration. So then TDA in a nutshell would be you are commissioning a study to solve an urgent issue in the community. So you go beyond sciences. So long are the days when scientists will work in their offices, in their laboratories, in a top-down way, then go and load it on the community by just disseminating it to the community. You know why I'm also addressing you through this mode? Because I want to get knowledge to the people, including the people who are not privileged to be in universities or colleges, who are not privileged to be able to read. So you can see what we are doing. So we now integrate knowledge. We build capacity of people who are being affected by this problem so that they know how to deal with their own problem. They become as bright as scientists. So we also bring in participation so that everyone else participates in issues that affect them. Those are the things we are looking at. We do research which is applied, so it will go either way. So theory, research, or research, then theory. So we then think about this method as one of the most important, one of the most sure research approaches that have been used in our time, particularly to address issues that look like climate change, issues that are very complex. So it has been declared the most appropriate method of researching that is very important to each and every one of us. Its outcomes are very sure, like resilience to climate change impact, improved livelihood, sustainable development, policy influence, innovation, social, and everything. Ladies and gentlemen, I want to not take a lot of time. I want to end this talk here, but I want you to reflect on the TDA, transdisciplinarity. Don't forget, ladies and gentlemen, to keep on liking, sharing, and subscribing to my channel for much more information. And this is only possible on Professor Oriaso Odongo Knowledge Hub. Welcome.